He entered timidly with a few coins in his hand and a little bird hidden in his shirt. He only wanted a simple cage, but the laughter came even before the answer. "This isn't a place for you," they said. But minutes later, the store owner looked at his phone, and what he saw made his face turn pale. Subscribe to our channel now and discover who was the boy who was humiliated for trying to care for those he loves. The sun punished the streets of Palmville, Arizona, when Jamie Wilson, an 11-year-old boy with sun-tan skin and dark berry-colored eyes, left home that Saturday morning. He wore a faded superhero t-shirt with prints that could no longer be distinguished and worn-out flip-flops from continuous use. In his hands was a small cardboard box, carefully perforated and decorated, with colorful drawings of stars and hearts made with school markers. "Mom, I'm taking Songbird to the mall," he shouted from the door of the small concrete house without plaster in the Hope Gardens neighborhood. Mrs. Linda appeared at the door, drying her hands on her flowery apron with a worried look. "Jamie, that place isn't for people like us. Why don't you go to the farmer's market? Old Tom sells cages there." "I don't want Old Tom's cages, Mom. They're too small, and Songbird deserves better. I saved $15 selling candy outside Elite Academy. It'll be enough to buy one at the mall." Mrs. Linda sighed, knowing that once her son set his mind on something, it was difficult to change it. Since he was little, Jamie had shown an uncommon love for animals, especially birds. She still remembered the day he came home with a swallow, with a broken wing, determined to save it. "All right, son, but don't take long. And if anyone gives you a funny look, you come straight back, you hear me?" Jamie nodded, already running through the hard-packed dirt yard, passing under the mango tree that shaded the house. The Palm Center was the first shopping mall in Palmville, inaugurated less than a year ago, a symbol of the progress arriving in the small town. With its shiny marble floors, brand-name stores, and a food court serving dishes with difficult names, as Mrs. Linda would say, the mall represented a world far removed from the reality of many local residents, including the Wilson family. In Tuhiwai, the pocket of his worn shorts, Jamie carried $15 in coins religiously saved over weeks. Every 10 cents he received in change from selling the brownies his mother made, he saved in a condensed milk can under his bed. The money was to buy a cage for the canary he had rescued 2 weeks earlier. Songbird, as Jamie had named him, was a yellow canary that the boy had found in a trap set by illegal hunters in the woods near the river that ran through the town. It wasn't the first time Jamie had dismantled traps. In fact, he had already become known among local residents for his personal crusade to protect wild birds. When Jamie finally arrived at the mall, he felt the coolness of the air conditioning contrasting with the stifling heat outside. The security guards at the entrance observed him with suspicion, but he pretended not to notice. He was used to that kind of look. He walked among the stores, looking wonderingly at the resplendent shop windows. He stopped in front of an electronics store, seeing reflections of himself in the latest gadgets. Then he passed by a store with expensive clothes, where the mannequins seemed to look at him with disdain. Finally, on the top floor, he found Pete, Lark's the only pet store in the mall. He took a deep breath before entering, adjusting his t-shirt as best he could, and checking if Songbird was okay in the box. The bird, with golden yellow feathers still a bit disheveled, chirped softly as if responding to the boy's care. The store was spacious, with walls in pastel tones and impeccably organized shelves. Imported products, premium food, sophisticated toys and accessories that cost more than Jamie's father, Mr. Anthony, earned in a month as a construction worker. At the marble counter, 2 saleswomen were chatting animatedly. Both wore impeccable uniforms with the store's embroidered logo. "Excuse me," said Jamie, approaching the counter timidly. The saleswomen stopped their conversation. The taller one, with artificial blonde hair and heavy makeup, looked him up and down. "Yes," she replied dryly, not hiding her discomfort. "I wanted a small cage, but one that's good for my bird. It needs to be cheap. I have $15, he explained, taking the coins from his pocket and placing them on the counter. The attendant, whose name tag identified her as Vanessa, exchanged a knowing look with her colleague Priscilla before responding with visible disdain. "We don't sell that kind of thing here. Maybe at a street thrift shop you'll find something like that." Priscilla let out a stifled giggle while pretending to organize some papers. Jamie swallowed hard but didn't back down. Instead, he carefully opened the box, revealing the small canary that, upon feeling the light, raised its head and looked around curiously. "It's for Songbird. He was caught in a trap. He was hurt, but now he's better. The box is already too small for him." For a moment, the entire store seemed to freeze. The background music, the conversations of the few customers, the hum of equipment, everything went silent. It was as if time had taken a pause to observe that unlikely encounter between such distinct worlds. In the back room of the store, away from customers' eyes, Robert Mitchell, owner of Pet Lux and 3 other stores in the state, was monitoring the movement through security cameras. A 50-year-old man with well-trimmed grey hair and Italian designer glasses, Robert had built his empire from nothing. The son of farmers from rural West Virginia, he had arrived in Arizona with only the clothes on his back and a lot of determination, something many of his employees were unaware of. While observing the boy at the counter and the attitude of his employees, Robert was distractedly checking the news on his phone. A headline caught his attention. "Young hero from Palmville saves dozens of wild birds from illegal captivity and wins State Environmental Protection Award." The photo showed Jamie, with a shy smile and a canary perched on his shoulder, receiving a certificate from the State Secretary of Environment. Robert choked on the coffee he was drinking. It was the same boy his employees were humiliating at that very moment. He felt his blood boil and a wave of shame wash over him. He remembered himself decades ago when he would enter fancy stores and be treated as inferior. He jumped up, dropping his phone on the desk, and rushed to the main floor. When he got there, he saw Vanessa pointing to the exit for Jamie, who was already putting his coins back in his pocket, head down. "Wait a moment," Robert's voice echoed through the store, making everyone turn around. Robert walked with long strides to the counter, leaving a trail of tension in the air. The few customers in the store stopped what they were doing to observe the unusual scene. The attendants, noticing their boss's serious expression, tried to disguise their embarrassment by adjusting their hair and forcing smiles. "Mr. Mitchell, we were just explaining to the boy that," Vanessa began, but was interrupted by a firm gesture from the businessman. To everyone's surprise, Robert Mitchell, the man who rarely bowed even in meetings with important politicians, knelt in front of Jamie, becoming eye level with the boy. "You're Jamie, aren't you? The boy who dismantled the illegal hunters network in the Muddy River region?" Jamie's eyes widened, surprised to be recognized. "Yes, sir, but I didn't do anything special. I just don't like to see birds suffering." Robert smiled, a genuine smile that made wrinkles appear at the corners of his eyes. "I'd like to apologize for the treatment you received here today. This store should be a place where people who love animals are welcome, regardless of how much money they have in their pocket." The businessman stood up and, before the astonished gaze of the attendants, continued, "Show me this canary you saved." Jamie opened the box again. Songbird, as if understanding the importance of the moment, let out a melodious trill that filled the store. Some customers approached, enchanted. "What a beautiful bird!" exclaimed an elderly lady who was choosing collars for her poodle. "And what a wonderful song." "It's a yellow canary," explained Jamie, gaining confidence. "They're almost extinct because of illegal hunters. They capture them and sell them to people who don't know how to properly care for them," Robert observed, impressed with the boy's knowledge and passion. "Come with me," he said, leading Jamie to a section of the store where various cages were displayed. "Choose the one you think is best for Songbird." The boy's eyes lit up at the options, but his expression soon changed to concern. "I can't pay for these, Mr. Mitchell. They're too expensive. I only have $15. The businessman put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Today you won't pay anything. It's my gift to you, a way of thanking you for what you do for animals." Jamie looked confused and suspicious. "But I don't need charity, Mr. Mitchell. My dad always says we have to pay for what we take." Robert smiled, recognizing in the boy the same pride he himself had in his youth. "It's not charity, Jamie. It's recognition. Sometimes people do important things without realizing how much they're changing the world. You're protecting our wildlife, preserving species that many people don't even know exist. That's priceless. After some hesitation, Jamie chose a medium-sized cage, not the most luxurious, but one that offered enough space for Songbird to move comfortably. Robert insisted on adding specialized food, vitamins, and some toys, but the boy accepted only the food, saying that the canary preferred to play with natural branches. "Can I pay $15 for the cage?" asked Jamie, extending the coins. Robert thought for a moment, realizing that it was important for the boy to maintain his dignity. "How about a deal? You pay $5 for the cage and accept the food as a gift. In exchange, you come here once a month to teach us about the birds of the region. We can organize talks for customers and employees." Jamie's eyes sparkled. "I can do that. I know everything about the birds around here," he exclaimed excitedly, then added timidly, "But I don't know how to speak in public." "You'll learn with time," Robert assured him. "We all start not knowing." While Priscilla, visibly embarrassed, was packaging the cage and the food, a customer was discreetly filming the scene with her cell phone. It was Deborah Martin, a digital influencer with more than 200,000 followers and known for her activism in environmental causes. She had entered the store by chance, looking for a gift for her niece's cat. Deborah approached Jamie as he was carefully placing Songbird in the new cage. "Hi, I'm Deborah. I thought your story was beautiful. Would you mind if I shared this moment on my social media?" Jamie, shy as always, shrugged. "You can share it, but I don't know if anyone will be interested." Little did he know the impact that video would have. In less than 2 hours, the recording had already surpassed 50,000 views. The hashtag #UtterBirdBoy quickly became one of the most commented topics on regional social media. People from AE all over the state began to share stories about Jamie, including photos from the Environmental Award ceremony that had happened months before but had received little attention from traditional media. In the Hope Gardens community, the Wilson family's house began to receive unexpected visits. Local journalists, representatives of environmental NGOs, and even the principal of the school where Jamie studied, who had never given much importance to his environmental initiatives, now wanted to hear his story. Mrs. Linda, initially frightened by the sudden attention, prepared coffee for the visitors while trying to understand what was happening. Mr. Anthony, upon returning from work, found the small living room of the house crowded and was speechless. "The boy always had this way with animals," explained Mrs. Linda, serving coffee in enamel mugs. "Since he was very little, he brought home all kinds of injured animals. We even had an opossum here that he found run over on the road." Meanwhile, at Pet Lux, Robert was facing an unexpected situation. Customers began calling and appearing at the store, not just to buy products, but to congratulate him for his attitude toward Jamie. Many confessed that, despite admiring the store's products, they had always felt intimidated by the exclusive environment and high prices. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. In his mansion in the most luxurious gated community in town, the businessman tossed and turned in bed, mentally reviewing the day's events. The image of Jamie, with his simple clothes and determined look, wouldn't leave his head. He remembered his own childhood on a humble farm in rural West Virginia, how his father struggled to maintain the small property, and how he himself had promised that one day he would change his life. And he did. But at what cost? Had he become exactly the type of person he despised in his youth? Someone who valued appearance more than character? Someone who allowed his employees to humiliate a boy just because he didn't fit the store's standard? The next morning, Robert arrived at Pet Lux earlier than usual. He called all the employees for a meeting and, without beating around the bush, announced changes. "From today on, our policy has changed. We will serve everyone with the same respect, regardless of how much they can spend. We're going to create a section of affordable products and start an environmental education program. And any employee who treats a customer badly because of their appearance or financial condition will be immediately fired." Vanessa and Priscilla exchanged worried looks They had never seen their boss so determined. "Mr. Mitchell, won't this affect our elite clientele?" Vanessa dared to question. "If our elite clientele doesn't know how to live with diversity, perhaps it's not the clientele we want," the businessman replied dryly. "Yesterday I looked in the mirror and didn't like what I saw. I built a successful business, but forgot the values my parents taught me." A week after the incident at the mall, life in Palmville, Arizona, was no longer the same. Deborah's video had surpassed the 1 million views mark and reached national proportions. The repercussion surprised everyone, especially the Wilson family, who wasn't used to so much attention. On a Tuesday morning, a TV station van parked in front of the simple house in Hope Gardens. A presenter from a highly rated morning show disembarked, accompanied by her team. Jamie, who was preparing to go to school, almost choked on his buttered bread when Mrs. Linda called him nervous. "Jamie, there's a lady from television who wants to talk to you." The boy, still wearing his school uniform a bit too big for his size, received the presenter in the yard, under the shade of the mango tree. Songbird, now installed in his new cage hanging from a low branch, was trilling happily as if he were welcoming the guests. "So this is the famous Songbird," smiled the presenter, Patricia Fontaine, carefully approaching the cage. "He's even more beautiful in person." Jamie smiled, proud. "He's almost ready to be released. Yellow canaries shouldn't live in cages, but this one needed care first." The interview, which should have lasted only a few minutes, extended for almost an hour. Patricia, enchanted with the wisdom and simplicity of the boy, set aside the rehearsed script and allowed Jamie to speak freely about his passion. He showed the artificial nests he had spread throughout the neighborhood, explained how to identify illegal traps in the woods, and demonstrated impressive knowledge about the local bird fauna. At no point, however, did Jamie mention the treatment he had initially received at Pet Lux. When Patricia touched on the subject, asking how he felt about being discriminated against, the boy just shrugged. "The important thing is that Songbird got a good home, and Mr. Mitchell was very nice afterward." That answer, in its profound simplicity, moved the veteran journalist who had interviewed celebrities and important politicians. The report aired the next day and touched the heart of America. The story of the boy who fought to protect wild birds, who faced illegal hunters without fear, and who maintained his dignity even in the face of prejudice, generated a wave of solidarity. Meanwhile, Robert Mitchell implemented radical changes at Pet Lux. The store, previously known for its exclusive environment and prohibitive prices, now offered a line of basic products at accessible prices. A sign at the entrance announced, "All animal lovers are welcome here." But the most significant transformation was the creation of the Free Wings Project, an initiative to protect wild birds and educate the population. Robert invited Jamie to be the ambassador of the project, offering a monthly stipend that could help with the family income without compromising the boy's studies. At first, Mr. Anthony resisted the idea. A simple and proud man, he feared that his son would be exploited or become dazzled by the sudden fame. It took a visit from Robert to the Wilsons' humble residence to convince the patriarch. "Mr. Wilson, I understand your concern," said Robert, sitting in the simple but impeccably clean living room. "I also came from a humble family and know how unfair the world can be. But your son has a special gift, knowledge that needs to be shared. I don't want to exploit him. I want to give him a platform to make a difference." After a long conversation, accompanied by strong coffee and homemade cookies made by Mrs. Linda, Mr. Anthony finally agreed, with one condition: Jamie's studies would always come first. The Free Wings Project was inaugurated with a big celebration at the Palm Center. The mall, which once intimidated Jamie, now displayed banners with his photo and songbirds. A permanent space was designated for educational exhibitions about local fauna, with weekly lectures given by specialists and by Jamie himself. Pet Lux became the epicenter of a silent revolution in Palmville. On Saturdays, the store promoted adoption fairs where rescued animals found new homes. Robert made a point of hiring Vanessa and Priscilla to coordinate these fairs, giving them the opportunity to redeem themselves through social work. Vanessa, initially resistant, surprised everyone by showing genuine remorse and dedication to the project. On a rainy afternoon, she sought out Jamie after one of his lectures. "I wanted to really apologize to you, Jamie. I was very unfair to you that day." The boy smiled without embarrassment. "It's all right. Sometimes we just need to get to know people better to understand them." The wisdom of those words, coming from someone so young, left Vanessa speechless. She just nodded, with tears in her eyes, before walking away. 3 months after the initial incident, the transformation in the town was visible. What began as an isolated act of prejudice, followed by redemption, now unfolded into a real cultural change. Schools in the region included environmental education in their curricula using material developed by the project. The City Hall created a special secretariat for wildlife protection, and the number of reports against illegal hunters increased significantly. The height of this transformation came when a major TV network invited Jamie to participate in a special documentary about young Americans who were making a difference in their communities. A film crew spent a week following his routine, classes at the local public school, work on the project, forays into the woods to dismantle traps, and his lectures at the mall. During one of these filmings, the moment most awaited by Jamie occurred: Songbird's release. Completely recovered, the canary was ready to return to nature. The release ceremony was held in a small ecological reserve on the outskirts of town, with the presence of local authorities, journalists, and dozens of children from the municipal schools. Robert Mitchell was there, as was Deborah, the influencer who had shared the original video. Jamie, wearing a new Free Wings Project t-shirt, was holding the cage with Songbird. His face expressed a mixture of joy and melancholy. "Are you ready to let him go?" asked Robert, approaching. "Yes," replied the boy firmly. He was never mine to keep, he just needed help for a while. With the cameras capturing every detail, Jamie opened the small door of the cage. For a moment, nothing happened. Songbird remained motionless, looking outside with apparent hesitation. Then, as if he had made a decision, the bird jumped onto Jamie's extended hand. The audience held their breath. The canary, instead of immediately flying to freedom, remained in the palm of the boy's hand. It looked around, then fixed its small black eyes on Jamie as if memorizing his face. And then, without warning, it began to sing, a trill so pure and intense that many of those present felt tears welling up. It was as if the small bird was saying goodbye, thanking him, or perhaps both. When the song ended, Songbird finally took flight. It rose in a spiral, higher and higher, until it became just a golden dot against the blue Arizona sky, to finally disappear among the trees of the reserve. There was a moment of reverent silence, broken only when one of the children began to applaud. Soon everyone joined in a spontaneous ovation that was not just for the bird, but for everything it represented. That night, the Wilson family received an unexpected visit. Robert Mitchell appeared, bringing with him a folder of documents. "Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Linda, I've come to make a proposal. The Free Wings Project is growing. We've received invitations to expand to other cities, and I'd like Jamie to continue being our ambassador." "He's still a child, Mr. Mitchell," reminded Mrs. Linda, concerned. "He has his studies, his normal life." "I know, and I respect that. The proposal includes a full scholarship for Jamie, all the way through college if he wants. And to compensate, for the time he'll dedicate to the project, I'm offering you a share in Pet Lux's profits." Mr. Anthony frowned, suspicious. "Why would you do that? We're nothing to you." Robert smiled, patient. "Mr. Wilson, your son taught me a lesson worth more than all the money I've ever earned. He reminded me of who I was, where I came from, and the values I almost lost along the way. That's priceless." After much discussion, and consulting with a lawyer recommended by the Construction Workers Union, the Wilson family accepted the proposal. The contract, drafted in a simple and transparent manner, ensured that Jamie would have time for studies and leisure, and that his image would be used respectfully. A year later, the Free Wings Project was already present in 5 cities across the American Southwest. Jamie, now 12 years old, divided his time between school, where his grades had improved considerably, the project, and his newest passion, bird photography. With his first professional camera, he captured rare species in their natural habitat, creating an impressive collection. Petlux, previously known only for its exclusivity, became a national reference in social and environmental responsibility. Robert Mitchell, a frequent guest on television programs and business lectures, spoke openly about his personal and professional transformation. "It took an 11-year-old boy to teach me what no expensive MBA could," he would say, without embarrassment. That the true value of a business is not just in profits, but in the positive impact it generates. Vanessa, who initially treated Jamie with disdain, became the coordinator of Petlux's volunteer program, recruiting and training young people from the periphery to work with animal protection. The change in her personality was so remarkable that many didn't believe the stories about her previous behavior. Priscilla, for her part, went back to school. Inspired by the transformation around her, she decided to study veterinary medicine, focusing on wildlife. On weekends, she gave tutoring classes to children from Hope Gardens, including some of Jamie's friends. The Palm Center, following Petlux's example, implemented inclusion and accessibility policies. One day a month, the mall promoted Community Day, with free transportation from peripheral neighborhoods, special prices in stores, and cultural activities for low-income families. The Ewell Wilson family, despite the financial changes in their lives, maintained their simplicity. Mr. Anthony continued working as a construction worker, although now he had his own small construction company. Mrs. Linda, with the money they received from the project, renovated the house and opened a small snack bar in the neighborhood, where she sold her famous brownies. As for Songbird, the canary that initiated this whole story, he was spotted several times in the ecological reserve. Some said he had formed a family, contributing to the recovery of the local canary population. Others swore that on certain mornings, he would return to sing near the Wilsons' house, as if visiting old friends. On a special afternoon, during the celebration of the first anniversary of the Free Wings project, with hundreds of people gathered in the Palm Center auditorium, Jamie was called to the stage for a speech. The boy, still shy but visibly more confident, adjusted the microphone to his height and looked at the audience. "I don't know how to make pretty speeches," he began, sincere, "but I wanted to say that anyone can make a difference, even being small and without money. The important thing is not to be afraid to enter places, even when it seems like we don't belong there, and not to let sadness turn into anger when someone treats us badly, because sometimes people just need a chance to be better." The simplicity and depth of those words generated spontaneous applause. Robert Mitchell, sitting in the front row, couldn't hold back his tears. Deborah, the influencer who had shared the first video, recorded everything for her social networks, where she now dedicated much of her content to environmental causes and inspiring stories. That night, returning home, Jamie sat in the yard under the starry Arizona sky. From his pocket, he took out a golden feather, one of those Songbird had left in the cage before being released. It was his talisman, his reminder that sometimes we need help to heal, but that the true destiny is always freedom. And it was. Songbird's song, free, insistent, and joyful, that opened all the doors that prejudice tried to close. And it was Jamie's attitude, more than any news or fame, that taught a lasting lesson. True dignity doesn't need to be defended with shouts, but with firm gestures, raised eyes, and a heart that doesn't bow to arrogance. Dear listeners, we hope that Jamie and Songbird's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking to your left. If you were moved by this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and make us reflect on our values. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're eager to read your comments and know which moment of this story touched your heart the most.